You ever go back home and that old restaurant, that old playground you used to hang out at is no longer there? What does that feel like? Well, what if something you were part of is no longer there? What if something you invested your blood, sweat, and tears is gone? What if you were part of an institution that provided opportunities for so many people, so many of your friends, and it's no longer there? Well, that's what happened to the Simon Fraser University football team when the athletic director and the president of the university decided to drop the program while the student athletes were preparing for exams and papers. Today we've got Doug Brown, Simon Fraser University football alumni, CFL All-Star, CFL Hall of Famer, to talk about this subject right here on The Ride.
Dropped like a dirty shirt. You know, I can't wait. I haven't talked to Doug Brown in years. I never knew him well, but he was always one of those guys I always looked up to as a player. I sent him as kind of a benchmark,
Sheldon,
in terms of how I wanted to play. But
Sheldon, speaking of shirts, how do you select your shirts for the show? Because again, today it would appear that we've contacted each other. We're both wearing a very matte gray T-shirt. What's your wardrobe selection process for the ride with Chevy and Nasty?
Listen, don't put that on me. Now, you and I both know. Earlier today, we jumped on a podcast with Rob Kerr, the guy that got us into radio 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I was wearing this shirt. You were wearing a different shirt. I think you looked at me and thought I looked so good that you had to go home and just try to look like me.
No, you know what? You do look good. I'm not gonna take that away. We actually look like twins today. There's a couple of times that I've seen that we actually look like brothers on the air, but today we definitely do. But this shirt, I was wearing it today. I happen to have been wearing a button-down shirt over it. But when I do our show, I like a little bit more casual look. And I will tell you this: I was sweating profusely under my arms. Yeah. And I decided that I needed to cool off a bit. So I took the shirt off. We got on the show. So yeah, we're matching attire today. Next time, let's call each other and let's make sure that we're, just a little bit of contrast between us because, we've got Doug Brown coming on today. You mentioned, I don't know what he's wearing, but I sure as heck know what he's probably feeling right now with the Simon Fraser University being dropped. Now Doug was a big dude. He was a great defensive tackle. It's going to be an all defensive tackle love in today. Any Doug Brown memories before we get him on the show, Sheldon?
Well, Doug was always one of those guys that just stood out, and he was probably the best Canadian tackle playing at that time, right? So yeah. I really enjoyed watching because the guy I'm tall, I'm 6'5", but he's got a good 2-3 inches on me. But just the way that he was able to put everything together was really just like phenomenal. So as a player, he's a fun guy to watch and gauge yourself against. My favorite thing though was I think there was a couple of years there when they brought in Jerome Haywood. Now, if Doug was the tallest guy in the defensive tackle position in the CFL, Jerome Haywood was maybe 5'8", maybe 5'9".
Yeah,
and
he was a bowling ball.
He was a bowling ball, and he was a stud. Like, that guy could play. I had a lot of respect for him. He played probably 4 or 5 years, maybe more. I don't honestly remember, but I just remember looking at that imbalance and thinking to myself, man, how do offenses prepare for that? Because, he kind of flipped strong side and short to side. So on any given play, you could be lining up to block Jerome Haywood, who's a bowling ball, comes in low, and the next time on a pass down, you got Doug Brown swimming just right over top of you.
Yeah.
I always wondered what it was like to prepare for those two.
Absolute monster, that man. And it's funny because when I talk to people who don't play football, who haven't been in the locker room, I think their impression of a football player is someone like Doug Brown. Like, you're a large human being. You're 6'5", about 280. I'm about 6'3", 275. We're big human beings for the average person. But you've got a guy here that's 6'8", well, at least in his playing days, in the 300, 310 range, and just a monster of man. And what struck me always, especially towards the end of his career, he always had a busted nose. He always had this big bandage. And I always thought, well,
right.
who is tall enough to smash that dude in the nose? Like, there was no one bigger. No one had a bigger helmet than him. It's like he wore a watermelon over his head. And just a fantastic athlete. I do know that when we bring him on, definitely, obviously, we're gonna spend the bulk of this episode, talking about the Simon Fraser University situation. We got the perspective from Jim Mullen, the president of Football Canada, and how involved they've been trying to amplify the voice of the people within that campus. Last episode, we had the Kremler family, which, they had 3 kids go through the Simon Fraser program. We had mom and son just talking about their amazing football journey and how great Simon Fraser was to them, and how tragic this was for Gideon and all his teammates and anyone connected to that community. And then today, having Doug on, but I also want to talk to him a little bit about CFL. Here's a guy, Hall of Fame career, spent his whole entire career with one team, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He wanted to bring a championship to Winnipeg. He had 3 opportunities, never did. And now he still makes Winnipeg his home. He's a part of the broadcast crew for the Blue Bombers, and they've won the Grey Cup 2 times in the last 3 years. How does that make a guy feel? I mean,
listen, you're asking the right guy for that. And you know what? In my opinion, you shouldn't ask him about that, because did he ever win a Grey Cup?
No, that's the thing.
So, and that's 3. The thing. So you're always like, well, I wonder what it's like not to win a Grey Cup. I don't have a Grey Cup, Chev.
Yeah.
You've got 4 of them. Doug Brown doesn't have any. I mean,
see, I know what it's like to lose one, but then I know what it's like to win the next year. I know what it's like to lose one and then win a couple years later. But I don't know what it's like to play in those games, lose them, and never get an opportunity. So I'm really curious, because Winnipeg Blue Bombers are the toast of the CFL. Great franchise. For years, they were kind of they were the crossover team. If they didn't make it in the top 3 in the West, they jump over to the East, because the East was historically weaker. They were always pretty good. They give you a tough go, but they weren't, what the Stampeders are. They weren't what the Elks or Eskimos were for a while. They weren't where the BC Lions were when, Wally Bona was there. And so, but now they are. They're the team that everyone gets up for. And again, to have those Grey Cups won while he's kind of covering the team as, a member of the broadcast crew, as a fan, I wonder what that's like. So maybe I'll ask her. I don't know. He's a big guy. I'm a little bit scared. Like, he's a huge, large man.
So here he is, without any further ado, Doug Brown.
So we've talked about it the last couple of episodes. Save SFU football has been trending in the football world since the beginning of April. Sheldon and I have been deeply invested in this story, because there's some stories that need to be told as this whole scenario unfolds. Both Sheldon and I played football in college. We got to play professionally for a long time. And as invested as we are in this story, we don't have that insider perspective that someone who played at that university, that represented those colors and then moved on. So we reached out today. Doug Brown joins us on the ride with Chevy and Nasty. Your Twitter bio says you're big in Japan. I don't know when you wrote that, but you're big anywhere you go, including on the internet. You barely fit on the camera. But Doug, welcome to the ride with Chevy and Nasty.
Well, guys, thank you very much for having me on. It's I've watched a few of your episodes starting off here, the inaugural season, and it's been a lot of fun. You guys have had some great guests on, some great chatter. So happy to be a part of it.
Right on. It's an honor to have you, Doug. I never knew you well when we were playing. We played kind of in that same era, but you're always one of those guys. I looked up to you. You kind of had that the perfect CFL career from the standpoint of any Canadian athlete. Like, how many years did you play in Canada for?
I played 11 in Canada, and I don't know. That's I think this show is a little bit of a testament to the kind of bonds and camaraderie you have, even with guys on different teams, right? All I did was ever compete against you guys. We all kind of played in the same position realm, but it just shows you the bonds you can make in the Canadian Football League, right? When you got a D lineman, ex-D lineman that call you up to have you on their show. Of course, you got to come on. I mean, what are you going to say, right? It's a brethren, it's a brotherhood, even though we never competed on the same team. I was actually drafted to Calgary in 1997, but I never quite made it there. And then after I retired, I was extended an opportunity to come help you guys out in the playoffs, but I got too scared of, Winnipeg people burning down my house if I left. So it never quite happened, but it's pretty cool. It shows you the CFL, right? It's a lot of players come and go in it, and but it's the strength of the association, right? And I think that ties in nicely. This is an example kind of what's happening with the alumni at SFU.
Speaking of that, April 4th, the football world, I guess in BC to start with, and then slowly across Canada, really got blindsided by the news that SFU drops their football program sort of in the middle of the night. And obviously, the most hurt are those kids that were preparing for exams, preparing for term papers, preparing to go home for the summer and get ready for a season of football. And that gets dropped on them. And we spoke last week to the Kremler family. Lana was the mom, and Gideon was one of three boys that attended SFU playing for the Red Leafs. But where were you, and how did the news come across your plate that the school that you had represented so proudly when you went to university drops a program?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, man. I was actually driving home from work about once or twice a week. I work out in Brandon at the hospital there as a medical equipment guy, and it's a 2-hour drive each way. And I remember all of a sudden my phone just started blowing up, and not wanting to do anything illegal on the road, of course, but I happened to catch a message that said something about SFU and the cancellation of the program. And you have to check your calendar. You're like, is it April Fool's Day? Like, I thought
Yeah.
that was like 3 days ago or something like that. I couldn't believe it. You actually sit there, you're in a little bit of shock. And it takes you a while to process, to go back. And, college for me was a heck of a long time ago, but you start thinking about it and you're like, okay, going to SFU, I just started playing football as a senior in high school. I wasn't given a full ride opportunity to SFU. I had to redshirt my first year. I didn't even get a full scholarship probably till I was a junior or as a senior. I was pretty much, any success I'd had in sports up to that point in high school was as a rugby player, and I think I showed up on the doorstep of SFU, maybe 6'7" and about 200 pounds, 210 pounds soaking wet. So it was, I think they redshirted me because they were scared I was just going to get broken out there on the football field initially, and I didn't have any coordination. But, I go back and I think about that, and, a big compelling reason was obviously, Simon Fraser University, when you grow up in British Columbia, that's known as the factory for creating CFL football players. And even though I had a partial scholarship offer from them, I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is a way for me to get my education paid for, or at least partially, right? And see what happens. And to me, the biggest thing, it was all about getting that gray t-shirt with the red letters and writing on it, SFU football. When I got one in training camp my first year, nothing made me prouder than that. And this is an environment that I was set up with the greats that had already come through before me, right? Guys like Glenn Jackson and Louis Pasaglia, and we had guys on our team that were seniors at the time, like Doug Peterson and Greg Frères and Rick Walters, right. and they were all, end up in the CFL. So it was, it was nothing more than a dream at that point in high school. And I was able to reflect at that time when I heard the news of the cancellation of the program. I'm like, if SFU, which was maybe 10, 15 minutes away from my house, if they didn't have a football program, I probably never would have played football. And, I have my entire life to thank for the opportunities that football has given me. And it all started with the foundation I created at SFU. So you guys, if we can all remember back to when you're, 17, 18 years old, coming out of high school, we don't know what the heck we want to do. We don't know. Half the time, I didn't know what I was good at. I didn't know what I would end up doing. I wasn't, particularly excelling in any particular area in academics. And it was, I just knew that SFU was a first-class university. I knew I'd have an opportunity to see if I could be a football player. I knew I could get my education partially paid for. So I just don't think that would have happened. I don't think I would have gone to UBC if that was the only viable entity in British Columbia, which as it sits right now, it is. So that was really hard to take. When you look back and you take an analysis, you take stock of how your university experience shaped you as a person and the opportunities it afforded you going forward. I think that was something that really affected me, really dawned on me. And, you go through the full spectrum of emotions, I think, in that scenario, from anger to sadness that, there's half of the opportunities for BC high school kids just got eliminated to play collegiate football in their own province. It's just a shame.
And that's the thing too, like for the local aspect of players, but Simon Fraser always had a legendary reputation across Canada. Like Chevy and I have talked about it before. He grew up in Montreal, and everybody even out there looked at Simon Fraser as this unique American football opportunity. I'm from northern Saskatchewan. You better believe SFU was on my radar as I was going into grade 11 and 12. But I never really thought of it from the standpoint of limiting options for the local kids. Like in Saskatchewan, we have 2 junior teams and 2 university teams. There's lots of football for guys. In fact, a lot of guys progress from high school to junior to U Sports and then wherever they can play after that. So yeah, you're eliminating the football option for 50% of the kids coming out. And not just like BC boys. There's a female on the team. I understand talking to the Kremlers, like the way that they offer scholarships. 35% of their team now is even American. And when you talk about the impact that us as Canadians and our institutions can have on the world, when you're bringing up 30 players, 20 players from the States on a scholarship to experience the Canadian way of life, living in BC, you're really just putting a wall up around your institution and shutting out opportunities now for people all over North America.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, that was one of the interesting things about playing at SFU was, just you had American teammates, you had teammates from all over Canada, and you went and you competed in, when I was there, we're in the NAIA, right? So we in Washington State and in Oregon, and we played all over the place, and it was really tough. Yeah, it wasn't easy. I think in our senior year, we were either 500 or 1 game above it, and that was seen as a very good season because you're in the thick of it down there. But as you guys know, that's you come on the other side of competition like that, it makes you a better player, right? If you play against a higher caliber of athlete, you don't have any regret about it because you learned from it, right? So it was a tough go, and obviously the program's had its ups and downs, but you never think it's going to get to this point where it's going to be taken away from so many fantastic aspiring athletes in British Columbia, and for them to only really have one opportunity now to play collegiate football.
Doug, it's quite publicized across the football world that this decision was done quite clandestinely. There was no correspondence with any of the stakeholders, not the coaching staff, not the support staff, not the athletes, surely, not their parents, not even the alumni. Was there any inkling amongst you and your peers, alumnus, that this was something that could be happening to the program?
No, it was a shock, and a lot of us really felt like we were blindsided, and it's only because we've been alumni of this program when there's been difficulties before in the past. I remember when they no longer had the opportunity to compete in the NAIA, and they had to try and get into Canadian youth sports and start competing in Canada. And the alumni was contacted, and we raised money and we donated, and we were just made aware that there was a situation and the program needed help, and they needed an outpouring of support, and we were able to do that. So I think what we're going to see tomorrow with the fundraising day to save SFU on Tuesday. I don't want to date when this program is going to come out, but there's going to be a fundraising day, obviously, for SFU, and I think you're going to see a lot of money raised and a lot of money matched by some very prominent figures in British Columbia that really want to see this program reinstated, and that's just it. That's why it was such a blind side, is that we weren't contacted. No one saw this coming. I thought it was an April Fool's joke because there was absolutely no writing on the wall that this was going to, we've seen the program struggle before. You're going to play NCAA Division II and not have a full flight of scholarship athletes on your team. You're not going to have as many coaches as you could. You're not going to have the same funding. It's like taking a butter knife to a gunfight, right? That's what they were doing a lot of times and playing NCAA Division II. terms of the resources that the Simon Fraser University football program had in comparison to the American teams that they were playing against. So they've obviously had their difficulties, but when this came across their doorstep, nobody saw it coming. It was just shocking.
So like, even the president had come out and said, guys, this is not a financial decision. Now, like, you've been around enough to know everything's a financial decision. But, you know, the way that she came out and said that, it gets me thinking, is there something bigger at play here? Are we starting to see Canadian academia looking down on football? Is this something that they're trying to push out of our institutions? Or is this just legitimately a money issue? Like, they're saying it's not, but do you have any insights or from dialogue that people have had with the school? What is the root cause of this?
Well, it's a big problem is we don't necessarily believe that what we've been told or what we've heard, you know, is legitimate, right? So we were essentially told that there was no place for the program to play in the conference and NCAA Division II that they were playing in. And then we find out, oh, hang on a second, that's 2024. 2023, they have a schedule. There was an expectation they were going to play, right? So that was kind of misleading initially. And then you read on and you find out, okay, well, you know, it would be unprecedented and incredibly complex for just the Simon Fraser University football program to get into Canada University sports. And then you think, okay, well, you know, SFU was kind of the first team outside of the United States of America that was allowed to play in the NCAA. I'm sure that was pretty complex and that was unprecedented. And there are teams, you know, that are members of Can West that have individual teams, like the UBC's baseball team, I believe, plays in the NAIA. So there are exceptions to the rule, but I think the thing that we found, like, you know, this was an excuse, this was a reason and an opportunity to get rid of the football team, was that they didn't try, like they didn't apply. It's one thing to say, okay, we can play 2023. We don't have a place to play in 2024. Alumni, you know, people that have stakeholders and investments in this football team that care about it going forward. What can you help us? Can we help each other and find a place to play for this program in 2024? And that just never happened, right? The plug was just pulled. And we weren't consulted because, you know, we weren't going to give up on this program. And that's the way it really looks. They didn't apply to Can West and Canadian University Sports because they didn't want to, right? It's all coming together. Like, this was just an opportunity for the administration and leadership at Simon Fraser University just to end the football program because, you know, we actually haven't been told. All we can do is speculate. I don't believe I've heard the truth as to why the football program is no longer a viable entity for the university, because all avenues have not been exhausted.
Yeah, Doug.
And you've got guys willing to write checks.
Yeah. People have been coming out of the woodwork to support this program, and it's been overwhelming.
Yeah, and you know, I was going to say there are a lot of people speaking out against what had happened, and from, you know, our conversation with you and two previous really engaging conversations about this topic, Sheldon and I have learned so much, and what we're seeing is, you know, the university was it seems to have been quite disingenuous in its treatment of the players, of the program, the people that came before, the people that could have had an opportunity to come after. I mean, you don't build a $20 million stadium 2 years ago and then all of a sudden just drop a program without even like talking to someone. So, there seems to be a real shroud of mystery, and the fact that the university hasn't come out and said anything more than some really, meaningless statements that aren't helping anyone. It's definitely clouding that. But what we also noticed is that it seems to have galvanized people. You know, football historically has been quite siloed in its support. And you mentioned some people have stepped forward. You know, we talk about Amar Doman for the BC Lions. We talk about Randy Ambrosie. We talk about some of the teams across the league, the NFLPA or the CFLPA, excuse me, offering letters of support. Like, this story is starting to get legs. I guess it's a two-part question. Was the Alumni Association, the SFU Football Alumni Association, strong and tight-knit before? And if not, how has this galvanized you guys to action towards hopefully, what those football players are trying to do, which is reverse the decision to get a season going for 2023. Because I think that's the focus right now, is to get these kids somewhere on a field in the upcoming season before the university has that time to stall and slow play it so the year passes.
Yeah, your first point about the SFU alumni, it's these guys are incredible professionals. It's been harder for me, being in Manitoba. Obviously, still very proud. Well, I was a once proud SFU alumni, and I don't think I was. Maybe I made that as an excuse, and I wasn't as involved as I should have been. But I've got an opportunity to join and attend a lot of their meetings, with this crisis, and I've been blown away, by the organization, the structure, the people involved, the talent, from the lawyers, from guys like Farhan. It's incredible, the talent of people that have gone through that program and that care about what's going on right now. It's a ton of work too, right? Like I've been on more Zoom calls with these guys than I'm doing with my job that pays the bills here in Manitoba. It's been a lot of stuff that's been going down, and I would say that group, that alumni group, I think there's a core of individuals, the guys you'll see over and over again with the emails that go out and the social media that goes out, and the people at the courthouse, and contacting media entities and such. There's a core group of guys that have been around there forever, and they've just been safeguarding this, and this is a huge deal for them, and it's inspiring, right? You get on a call with these guys, you see how much it means to them as well. You're not alone in this, right? And these guys they'll fight to the end to try and get this program reinstated, because they understand the value and how it affected and shaped them as well. So just in terms of the latest update was some of the correspondence we did hear from the leadership at SFU was all about the special advisor that they wanted to appoint. And you're like, well, that's great, because you got to have a football team to evaluate and to learn from. It's supposed to be a 6-month period where this advisor would go back and provide recommendations to the university leadership. But then you find out on reinstating the team. So how do you advise on something that doesn't exist? That is what I haven't been able to wrap my head around. If there's no season in 2023, if the injunction attempt, which I believe is ruled on May 3rd, if that is unsuccessful and you appoint a special advisor, there's no football team. There's no coaches. The players are all going to be gone. They'll be disbanded. They'll be dispersed to other programs if they have that opportunity. There's nothing to investigate or advise on. So just like you guys have suggested, it seems like, hey, this is a way to slow play this issue. If it goes an entire 2023 season, there's no SFU football, then it kind of dies out, right? Like, how can you make a recommendation about the impact of a football team that doesn't exist anymore? And that's, that was a comment, I think, that really opened the eyes of a lot of guys that were in disbelief about the intentions of what the university was trying to do here.
And that's the thing that worries me a little bit, Doug. Like, if they're of the position that there's not going to be football at SFU in 2024, are these efforts in vain? Like, it's great. I love how the football community has gotten galvanized around this. I'm hearing great things out of the Alumni Association. This is all over, national football media anyway. What are the chances of actually getting this thing turned around? Like,
that's a great question.
My biggest fear is just a bunch of lip service. Like, in government, you see all these big investigations going on, but it leads to absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
What are the odds that we save SFU?
I think there was an opportunity with the meetings that were had. Guys like Farhan got to go up on the Hill, and the president of the alumni got to have meetings with leadership at SFU, and they were hoping to keep this out of court, right, and not have it a legal issue or a legal battle. And but now the injunction is ongoing, right? So I believe the issue at hand here is of a breach of contract, right, between a student athlete and the university, and And not only that, it's they violated their own charters with their procedure and the way they went about canceling this program, not engaging or talking to stakeholders. I'm not the best in terms of having their charter memorized, but I know it was brought up to us. There's a number of charter items that they violated. And May 3rd, we find out whether the injunction filed by our lawyers that are part of the SFU alumni, whether they're going to be successful in that or not. That injunction is successful, which there's a lot of confidence in that. Then SFU pretty much has to resurrect and play a 2023 football season, and that would give the special advisor at least something to advise about.
And then the scramble would be on to find a season for these guys, right? Find some opponents, because obviously for what we know, the Lone Star Conference has moved on, and that's kind of their public statement for now. They don't want to get involved in any sort of legal battle. I assume that if the injunction is upheld and the decision is reversed, then it starts working the phones to get maybe some league play or some exhibition play for these guys.
There is a plan.
What's plan B?
Yeah,
okay.
It's funny. Do you guys know anything about? I learned this myself. Notre Dame football and their affiliation.
Yeah, independent,
right? So, these meetings that we've had, the SFU alumni has had with the leadership at SFU, they've presented schedules. They've presented multiple schedules. They've shown multiple opportunities. You don't have to be a part of Can West to play Can West teams as an independent. You don't have to be part of the NAIA to play teams in that association as an independent entity. Yeah, you're not going to win a championship or anything like that, but you can play collegiate football for Simon Fraser University as an independent, and you don't need anybody's permission you don't need league permission other than the individual teams that you're going to play that have a free week, that have a bye week, that want to add to the start or the end of the season or whenever, that has a scheduling conflict. If you can agree with that program, you can play as an independent. So SFU doesn't even need to go through the unprecedented and incredibly complex process as told to us from the athletic director of applying to be the only sport at SFU to be part of Can West. They don't have to do that for 2023. They can play and put together a schedule as an independent, and it's already been done. Everything in terms of contacts with teams that have interest, that would be the least of their worries in terms of finding opponents to play, because it's available to any football team and any football entity.
Well, that's a neat model too, because you could literally go from playing Walla Walla, Washington to the U of S Huskies. I mean, even from the student athlete standpoint, that's actually kind of a cool experience. It's a little gimmicky, right? Not being a part of a conference, but talk about amazing experience.
I loved when I played in the NAIA that we would play against UBC in the Shrone Bowl every year. That was the biggest game on our calendar. We had some great battles and competitions with teams like Pacific Lutheran University, Central Washington, Western Washington, Southern Oregon. These are all teams. Linfield College. These are well-established programs in the U.S. we played against, but biggest game for me every year was the one that didn't count. That was coming back to Swangard Stadium or going to Thunderbird Stadium and playing UBC in a game that meant nothing in terms of our affiliation, meant everything to us in terms of bragging rights in British Columbia, right? These are kids that you competed against in high school, and now they're in university, and so are you. And it's one of the biggest rivalries in all of Can West was SFU UBC, and they had just brought it back last year. It had gone away for a while, and due to the leadership, a lot of these prominent names and faces you're seeing right now, they brought back the Shrone Bowl, and it was a big deal. They were talking about having it in BC Place this year due to the interest in that game and that rivalry. It's a huge thing. So, yeah, I agree with you guys in the sense that being an independent, it doesn't carry the same weight as being a conference or getting a national championship opportunity, but there are some rivalries. There are some great college football games that you could see come out of an independent schedule.
There's no doubt. I was actually laughing. I know my point I was making, you kind of made it for me, but again, I never even imagined that one week you'd be playing 4-down
Yeah.
football, U.S. rules, 11 men on the field. And then the next week you could be going up to Saskatchewan and playing 12-man CFL rules. That just blows my mind. And it really would add to the experience because the game changes, right, as we know. But, yeah, I would think that would be a fantastic opportunity, Doug. And, yeah, we're following this as best we can and amplifying the message as much as we can. You mentioned a couple of things, and maybe we'll kind of transition. First, you mentioned you're so far away. You're living out in Winnipeg now. You do local media. You do the play-by-play for the Blue Bombers and the CFL. Is this football? Is this just a BC football story, or is it getting legs further east? Because we're in Calgary. We're talking about it. It's making a little bit of waves. Obviously, Sheldon and I, we tune into Twitter. We're tuning into the Save SFU football hashtag to know what's the latest and greatest. We talked to Jim. We talked to you. We talked to some of the families. But further east, is it getting legs? Is there a little bit of a wave of interest, or is it still just sort of siloed into BC and really trying to generate that support around there?
You know what? Funny, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure how big this was going to be. I wasn't going to see. I didn't know what kind of legs it had, and then my phone rang, and it was Wade Miller, right, from the Winnipeg Football Club, and he's a University of Manitoba graduate, and he explained to me in talking to him, this is a CFL issue, right? This is a football program that has placed more players in the Canadian Football League than any other Canadian university. Okay, and that's something to be said. There are some fantastic university programs. They keep getting better and better. I mean, here, University of Manitoba, it seems like every 3 or 4 years now, they put a starter in the National Football League. It's insane what's going on in terms of, the ascension of these programs, how good they're getting, the coaching, the infrastructure, the caliber of athletes that are coming out of these universities in Canada. It's incredible. And, just as we talked about how BC amateur athletes would have their opportunities cut in half if it was just UBC as the only collegiate football viable entity for them in the province. Well, it just makes sense that the CFL and every member club would not want to lose one of its biggest feeder schools, right? Like, there's a lot of talent. I remember when I saw the list of 200 and something draft picks that had come out of Simon Fraser University, and you just look down the list at the names, and you think about the game of the Canadian Football League without any of those players in it, and that's when it kind of dawns on you that this is across the country a problem, because that's a major these players in that program have a major impact on the Canadian football landscape.
Well, you mentioned one of my idols growing up, and that was Doug Peterson.
Oh my
I got to
God.
be his teammate for a season in 2002 in Edmonton. But before that, I mean, I was a wide-eyed football fan watching him star for the Montreal Alouettes, and legendary stories of his workouts and his work ethic. And yeah, to watch a guy that comes from that program, like you mentioned, all these greats, but that was my guy. And he's a Simon Fraser alum. And then actually to get to play with him, and he's even greater guy. So yeah, that losing that program really has a ripple effect. And it kind of takes me back to something you said at the beginning of this, because, we're almost coming up against it. But you talked about you wouldn't be where you are if it were not for football. You grew up in Burnaby, BC.
Port
correct?
Moody, just outside.
Port
About 15
Moody,
minutes away
BC.
from SFU. Yeah.
Like you said, you showed up at the SFU football team's door at 6'7", 200 pounds, soaking wet, and you turned into again. Whenever I saw you was in the huddle, I could always identify you because not only were you the tallest, you had the largest helmet in the world, and you went on to a Hall of Fame career, and now you're in Winnipeg, of all places that you could have imagined ending up. You're in Winnipeg. You're still affiliated with the only team you really played with your entire career, which you made your Hall of Fame career with the Blue Bombers. Is a fantastic player. I mean, geez, Swaggerville. We loved Swaggerville.
I'm not taking responsibility for that. Continue.
but you're out there now, and how has that been for you? Because that program gave you the opportunity to be where you are now. So what is it you're doing now that kind of gives you that purpose in life. Because you said it, you didn't know what you were going to do when you were 16, 17 years old. And football got you to a place where you're doing the thing that you're doing for the rest of your life. So tell us what's going on.
Yeah, well, I think, anybody that has gone through a university program, at that level, you learn about your work ethic takes on a new chapter, right? And determination, goal setting, teamwork, and anything. It's time management as well, right? You talk about the student experience in post-secondary. Well, what about the student athlete, right? And guys that graduated, doing all the academics that the students do there, but on top of that, all the requirements and demands of being an athlete at the same time, learning to navigate that. It's funny, my opportunity, I work for a company now as an independent contractor, Zimmer Biomet West, and my boss almost exclusively hires ex-hockey or football players. Corey Mantica, you guys remember him from the BC Lions? He works for the same company I do. Mm-hmm. And Ben Fairbrother from the Stampeders. He's he played in BC.
Riders.
He's going to get mad at me. But there's a number of ex-CFL guys that dabbled in the AHL or the NHL. And, this organization, those are the kind of people they want to hire because, they know we're highly motivated people. We understand, how to work in stressful environments, high pressure scenarios, how to work as part of a team, how to deal with the disappointment and failure and move on. You understand work ethic. It's just, all these principles. You think you get a taste of it in high school, but really your university experience as an athlete is what creates your foundation for the person I think you are going forward. And it set the table for me, for my time in the NFL and obviously in the CFL. And those lessons you learn, playing football, which some people don't think is, I don't know, if they don't think it's a progressive sport, they should see how the rules have changed since a lot of us started our careers and
when we started playing, there was a 3-step rule on hitting quarterbacks. I mean, the stuff we used to get away with back in the day has been cleaned up a lot.
Concussion protocol, the game has evolved as much, if not more, than every other sport. It is diverse. It is inclusive. Everybody can play. Like you'll never find a roster that has more shapes and sizes and abilities and ethnicities than a football team, right? And you'll never find stronger bonds. And that's one thing this SFU scenario has showed us is that there are guys on this alumni board I haven't talked to in years. And now, you look at my phone, you go down my text message list, and we haven't missed a beat. I haven't talked to you guys in 13 years, and we're just getting after it. We don't, there's no catching up necessary because you were out there on the field with these guys. They were your coaches, they were your teammates. And or they came before or after you. You understand you're part of that collective circle. So, there's so much to give, to be thankful for. A university program that leads in a professional program, and I'm one of those guys that because of my university education, because of where I played football, that's largely responsible for the jobs I have right now and how I support my family. So you can't do enough to try and save a program and offer those opportunities for the guys that are up next, right? Because, there's a Chevy, there's a Nasty out there that need that opportunity, that need that discipline, that need that indoctrination of what football can do and how it can shape you as a person in order for them to be successful in life. And the three of us, I don't even want to know where we'd be if we didn't have, that foundation set for us by the game of football.
Absolutely.
We'd be pit fighting in the UFC or something, right? Is that what we'd be doing?
I'd be feeding cows up.
There you go.
I'd be feeding cows up in northern Saskatchewan. But that's awesome. So let's just change topics a little bit. It's been a few years. How's the body treating you? You played a lot of pro football for a lot of years. How are you feeling these days?
I'm very lucky, very, very blessed. I thank every time I see my parents, I'm like, thank you guys. I've been able to not have a surgery, right? My entire career and thus far, I broke a lot of bones. Obviously, you can see the nose isn't exactly straight. I don't know if that conveys on these
Yeah.
on these calls or not, and broken all my fingers and my toes, my nose, my orbital bone, so on and so forth. But my mother always told me her only concern, was that I walked into the game. She wanted me to be able to walk out of it, and somehow, I pulled it off. And I'm one of the lucky ones, right? Guys pay an ultimate sacrifice sometimes in terms of their future mobility and what they can do. And it's interesting with the job I have now. You play football, and sometimes you get so fired up. It's like you're trying to put people in the hospital, and now we're helping get people out of the hospital by changing their resurfacing their joints and replacing knees and hips and shoulders and so on. So life comes at you full circle like that sometimes. So it's interesting.
So how common is that you're seeing that these days? Because I mean, we're just kind of progressing through that phase of life where we might be faced with that.
Yeah.
Like I see a lot of my peers right now. I'm 47. A bunch of guys that I know, whether they played football or not, I'm hearing a lot more stories about hips and knees. And so how is that? Like, is that, I guess, for lack of a better term, is that big business right now? Like,
Yeah, I mean, athletes, certainly athletes that have had procedures before, right? Scopes or operations or tears or so on and so forth. I mean, it gets you on a slippery slope, I think, to osteoarthritis. And but it's also, just how society is changing, and people demand more. They want to be active, more and for longer, and be able to do things and not be interrupted. And that's the really cool thing about the profession, that I'm lucky to work with some incredible surgeons, and you help out with your products, and hopefully you can restore some mobility and some pain-free motion to some of the people that undergo these procedures. So it's quite a different field. Like I said, it's coming full. If I don't know. It's sometimes when you're looking at a lot of times we see the condition of some of these joints and stuff, and you're like, man, maybe we shouldn't have tackled so hard in football. These things have consequences, right? They catch up with people for sure. And it is, as you guys know, it can be a pretty intense and pretty impacting game, professional football, even collegiate football, even high school football. And eventually the piper needs to be paid at some point. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times.
But bottom line, would you have done it again though? That's the question. I'm always curious when we talk about it, right? No doubt, right?
Yeah, it's you'll never lose those memories, right? They'll never take that. That can't be taken away from you, and just everything that comes with it. The spin off of being a high school, a collegiate, a professional football player. The opportunities it affords you, the lessons you've learned, the friendships, the brotherhood, it goes on and on, right? How you've developed as a person, as a professional. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for the industry I'm in right now is, if you need to take care of yourself. You need to stay active. You might not be able to run anymore, but you got to bike then. You got to do something else. And I feel like, the better you take care of yourself, the more active you are, the longer you can put these things off in terms of the deterioration. But as I say, for football players, a lot of times these situations get accelerated because of the trauma that happens. It can happen early on in your career.
Well, I tell you what, I got asked once to keynote a squash banquet for a bunch of squash clubs that were together, and I didn't know how I was going to talk to these people. And I sat at the table, and usually when I do a talk, I'm just kind of listening around the table to see if I can pick up any tidbits that I can do in my intro. And I'm sitting around this table, right, and I'm listening to these guys talk from all these different clubs, and guys and gals actually, and they were talking like football players, like talking about their knee replacements, their hip replacements, the elbow joints. I was like, so I opened with that. I said, you would have thought that, sitting here at this squash banquet, I was at a football banquet with all the knee and hip replacements. So it's everywhere, right? And I guess the advancements, like you said, in medical technology allow people to live those longer lives that we have with more quality and more, I guess, vigor, right? Because no one wants to just sit on the sidelines. And if you've ever competed at anything, whether it's hockey, football, any type of sport, in some capacity, you want to move, you want to do something. So I love what you said about that, but I want to change just a little bit gears. I didn't know if I was going to bring this up, and I hope it's not a sore spot. You played a long career, Hall of Fame career, like one of the most dominant defensive tackles in the CFL. I just saw a really nice piece. Jay McNeil said some really kind words about you, about being one of the toughest guys to ever play against him. Jay McNeil, obviously one of our teammates with the Stampeders. You went to 3 Grey Cups, and you came up empty-handed. I know that's tough. I know that's tough. All with the Bombers, but you're also affiliated with the team. You do the play-by-play, and it's got to be a good time to be in Winnipeg the last 3 years, right? 3 Grey Cup appearances, 2 victories. That team looks like the toast of the CFL. Maybe what the Stampeders were a few years ago. The hierarchy has changed in the CFL, and how fun is it to be sort of connected with the club in the way that you are, and how different is it now? New stadium, new look, they win. Tell us a little bit about that.
Very, very jealous. That's, you know what? It's, you have your opportunity as an athlete, and first of all, I wouldn't change anything, right? I never got to be a free agent. Winnipeg never gave me a reason to leave. I always just loved playing here because of the passion of the fans. And you wanted to be part of that team that would resurrect, the championship era of Winnipeg and how they used to be right before that drought. And we got close a couple times. It wasn't meant to be in my era, but it's so great to watch this new regime, led by Wade Miller and Mike O'Shea and Kyle Walters. And, Wade had a different game plan for this franchise when he took over, and it was continuity. For the longest time, whether I was a player or whether I was, doing the color commentating for CJOB on the Bombers, it was, you got 2 years, maybe 3. And if you're not winning, it was next. Who's up, right? Like, I think I had 7 to 9 head coaches. I could count them out right here, but a lot of head coaches over 11-year career. And Wade, Mike O'Shea didn't have the greatest first 2 years. And that was all of our expectations. We're like, okay, well, who's next now? But he saw something there, and he stuck with those guys, and he stuck with Kyle. And that principle of continuity is really paying off for this football club now. It's pretty funny because in the NHL, you sometimes hear about, the Winnipeg Jets as being, on guys' no trade clause, right? Oh, it can't be anywhere but Winnipeg, right? Sometimes. Right. And it's the destination now for the Canadian Football League. There are guys that take haircuts, right? Pay cuts to stay in Winnipeg now because they want to be part of that culture that's been created. And it's tremendous. It doesn't last forever. Calgary's been a flagship of the CFL for the longest time. And it's been an incredible 3-4 years for Winnipeg, and it looks like they're going to continue and push on with that. But it all starts with the vision and that culture. And it just goes to show you, in professional football, professional hockey, really any sport, never say never in terms of your appeal to a fan base. It just has to start with the right leadership. And you throw in that stadium, you create a culture led by a head coach like Mike O'Shea. And all of a sudden now, people want to come play. You got Kenny Lawler, who left for $300,000 to go to Edmonton. He couldn't get back here fast enough, back to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And it's pretty incredible. You just haven't heard of, I haven't been around for that era with Winnipeg and the Blue Bombers before. And it's fantastic to be just along for the ride, observing and commentating on it. And the greatest thing of this whole perspective is finally you get to see this fan base rewarded for their loyalty and their allegiance to this football team. It's all paying off for them now, and they're just giddy, right? Like the first parades and the celebrations, as you guys know, the fans are the ones that create this league, that pay the bills, that pay your salary as a player. That's why we do so much community work. We can't help ourselves but give back to the CFL football community that created these opportunities for us. And to see the long-suffering Winnipeg Blue Bomber fans finally be rewarded in the fashion they're getting right now, it's spectacular, man. I wouldn't trade it for anything to be a spectator and, watching this fan base that's been so passionate about their team finally have it pay off in spades.
All right, guys, it's bonus time. The extra point with Chevy and Nasty.
Are we going for 1 or are we going for 2?
Who was the toughest guy?
Just to stay on Rob Lazio for a second, he was in Winnipeg before he went to Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
So, he went over to Saskatchewan, and all of a sudden, he wasn't starting at the time. He didn't really start starting until he got to you guys in Calgary. And so we're playing the game, and all of a sudden, you guys score, or Saskatchewan scores a touchdown, or they're going to a field goal, and Rob Lazio's all of a sudden he's lining up across from me, right? He's part of the field goal package. And, sometimes when you're tired and they scored and, it's not a pivotal extra point, you just kind of come off the ball and you just you go through the motions a little bit, right? I never like to be a guy that would take a play off, but if there was a time I was going to take a play off, it was on, field goal block or whatever.
Sometimes you're just being an asshole if you don't. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I remember it came off and Lazio just jacks me up and he's like talking, he's like, "There you go, Brown. I knew you couldn't bring it," and all this.
Wow.
The guy that was his snaps in the game, right? And he was going full out on field goal protection, like coming up, firing off the ball at me. So this is when I was playing with Denny Fortney. And, I told Denny when he came off the field, and I'm like, yeah, next field goal or extra point. He's like, Rob Lazio wants us to bring in kind of thing. So I think it was a field goal, and it was one where he had to cover or whatever. So I blasted off the line. I'm not sure if I put him down there or not, but I know when he was running down the field, Denny and I were taking turns just running in, you just ignore the play sometimes. Every now and then in professional football, you just go after a guy.
Yeah.
And you don't worry about the play. And you're like, we're just going to write this one off, and you're going to take the film session that's going to follow after it. And we just started pinballing him. I'd hit him, Denny would hit him, we'd both hit him at the same time, we'd knock him down, we'd wait, we'd stand over, we'd jump on, it was just all the way down the field. And then when Rob started, he stopped calling us out on field goal block.
The legend of Charlie Roberts is that he'd go out of the locker room at halftime into the concourse and have a smoke, right? Bum a smoke off is that true or?
I saw him with his fair share. I never knew a timing of it all, but Charlie was he was God-given talent, my friend. Yeah. It did not matter what he ate. It did not matter how he trained. It did not matter how he took care of himself, the amount of sleep he got, whether he could just ball. Yeah. And for a little guy, he was so tough. You couldn't catch him square. Nobody ever hit Charlie flush, right? And he was as tough as nails, and he just had this incredible ability. That's why I used to tease him, because I'm like, man, if you would actually train on top of all this, we would never seen you up here before. And but yeah, he was Milt Stegall refers to him as the most uniquely talented guy he ever played with, because Charlie had to show up and put his shoes on, man. He was ready to go.
Doug, you know what? I think we're up against it now. But I just want to thank you again for coming on, and for sure we're going to be following, marking on our calendar May 3rd, make sure the injunction goes forward. But you know what? I'll tell you, closer to the season, we'd love to catch up with you again and give us kind of breakdown of what's new with the Bombers this season. And again, just it's great to connect with you again. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
It's great to see both you guys. Like you said, any opportunity to talk a little football with the likes of two characters such as yourself, larger than life guys in the CFL scene, man. I knew I was going to have a great time coming on here. I've seen your guys' program, so it was a pleasure to be on here and share these stories with you guys. So thank you for having me on your platform, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Doug, anytime. It's been great having you. Thanks for answering the call. If people want to follow you on Twitter, I know you've got some great takes on things. Often you're quite quick with the wit. Where are they following you if they want to get on?
I don't even know I think it's Doug Brown 97. I'm not really sure, but
I think it's Doug
I'm
Brown
friends
97.
with you guys, so just look us up, right, or something like that. I think that's my handle.
He's big in Japan, folks. He is big in Japan.
Well, Doug Brown, what a guy. I mean, honestly, the guy was a legend back in his playing days, a guy that all defensive linemen looked up to. But Chevy, you did it. You asked him the question. You asked how it felt to never win a Grey Cup just because you've got 16 rings. And his answer, he's jealous.
Yeah. Well, geez, Sheldon, it was great. Doug was great because it's one of those things, you know, we got on and he mentioned it a couple of times, kind of that brotherhood where you get on and you just talk with guys like no time is passing. I'm going to be 100% honest. I don't think I've had more than 1 or 2 conversations with Doug Brown my entire career. I knew one of our former teammates was good buddies with him, Brian Clark, if you remember Brian.
Oh, yeah. Brian and I played together for years.
And Brian was teammates with Doug in Winnipeg. And I know they were pretty tight, but you're not tight with everyone in the league. And to have a really meaningful conversation with a guy like that, I mean, I was always a little bit, not intimidated by him, but with a guy that's 6'8", and he was I mean, if I was, a Chevy as a defensive tackle, he was, a Ferrari. You know what I mean? Like he was the man. And I mentioned Doug Peterson was, I held him in that esteem, at least of guys that I watched play, you're one of the great D tackles that I ever played with as well. And we were roommates and I got to learn so much off you, but that respect was there. Totally. And to be able to have really a frank, candid conversation, not just about SFU, which, hopefully, it does turn around in favor of those kids that want to play, in favor of all those BC kids that were looking for an opportunity to play post-secondary football. But even just to ask that question, and get a really cool response about, how he feels, I thought that was great. And, we touched on his career. I mean, really interesting. And I'm sure for a lot of the people listening here, he's doing hip and knee replacement. He's repping medical devices. You asked him how he's feeling. You know what? I never asked you, Sheldon. How's your body feeling after? Are you in line for a hip or a knee or an elbow? I mean, there's days certainly when I feel it, and then there's other days where I'm like, I feel great.
I think I felt worse the first few years out. Like, my back is what kind of ended my career, slowed me down at the end. And yeah, I struggled out for it a little bit. No, honestly, I feel pretty good. I know I should be probably more active than I am, like all of us, right?
Yeah.
But overall the body feels good. I think my favorite part though, and I hope we're able to get some of this onto the air as well. Some of the conversations about the guys he played with, some of his stories about going against Rob Lazio, it really just brings me back to a time and place of remembering some of these great names and great faces in the battles. In fact, I'm going to put it out right now. To those of you that stay till the end and are watching or are listening to this right now, who were some of your favorite guys? Who was the toughest guy you hated to see your team go against because he was dirty or he'd always break your heart in the fourth quarter? I'm kind of looking forward to maybe reaching out and getting a few more of these guys on, some names from the past and even some current guys, because there's a lot of great players in the CFL right now.
Yeah, we never know where it's going to go, but we sure as hell appreciate that all of you are out there joining us on the ride. Remember, like, subscribe to the show. Tell a friend. You got a buddy that you sit with at the bar and the campfire. Tell them about our show. We want to grow this organically, and we need you to do it because Lord knows, Sheldon and I have no idea to clickety-clack on the computer. We just talk a lot. So thanks for joining us on the ride.